Welcome to the second session of Building Your Off-Premises Tech Stack, a day-long virtual event hosted by us at Food On Demand. In this digital ordering update session, we're here to discuss the shift to digital ordering, which we all know has happened at a breakneck pace over the last months and years. And as the dust is settling from the worst of the pandemic, we're here diving into the best practices and solutions out there for restaurant operators of all kinds who are looking to further integrate digital ordering channels into their operations. And I'm joined today by two excellent industry experts for this panel. First up, we have Alex Canter, founder and CEO of Ordermark, which is also the parent company of NextBite. And for anyone who has not had the pleasure of meeting Alex, he is one of the primary thought leaders in the industry. And Ordermark is a digital ordering and integration platform. And the company also recently started NextBite, which is its virtual restaurants platform. So Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to continue to do these sessions, and hoping that at some point we'll be back in person one day.
It will be glorious when that gets here, and sounds like it's getting sooner by the day. And next up we have Andrew Boryk, who is the Chief Technology Officer and the co-founder of Lunchbox, which is a very high-profile, very outspoken provider of online ordering, delivery integrations, pocket kiosks, and digital marketing campaigns. So we're very grateful to have you as well, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's been a wild ride the past couple of years, and just so excited to be here and chat with you both.
I have no idea what you're referring to, Andrew. But so to set the stage just a little bit more, it's very easy to see why both of these companies have captured the attention of Wall Street investors and big players in the restaurant space as well. Here at Food On Demand, my fellow editor Nick and I once expected that the so-called delivery integrators would eventually be overtaken by the legacy restaurant technology providers, thinking of the big name POS brands or even the third-party delivery brands themselves. And we were wrong. That definitely has not happened. And as the delivery providers themselves consolidate, it seems like the delivery technology brands have stolen a lot of the spotlight and become some of the primary drivers of innovation in the off-premises restaurant space. So that is the starting point, but let's get into it. Alex, if you could, tell us a little bit about yourself and both Ordermark and NextBite, which are two very different offerings, but under the same roof.
Yeah, so just backing all the way up, I'm the fourth generation operator of Canter's Deli, which is one of the oldest and largest restaurants in Los Angeles. And growing up in the family business definitely made me very passionate about helping restaurants adapt to the next generation and embracing new technology. And I co-founded Ordermark in 2017, really to make it simple for restaurants to shift to this new off-premise world and digital world that we live in. There's not a lot of products and services and tools to help mom and pop restaurants make that switch over, and it's kind of like the e-commerce phase of the restaurant industry happening before our eyes right now. And Ordermark, was founded really to aggregate all the different online ordering systems into a single device that can go directly into the kitchen of a restaurant. And ultimately, as we started to scale and power delivery for thousands of restaurants, from mom and pop to large chains, we really have been focused since day one on how do we drive more incremental orders into these restaurant kitchens. We know that most restaurants have underutilized capacity. They can handle extra orders out of their existing operation. And that was really the foundation of spinning up and launching NextBite, which is our virtual restaurant side of the business, where we're basically building virtual restaurant menus and concepts that exist only online, and helping to train restaurants to really turn on new menus, new brands out of their existing operation, using the same overhead, the same staff that's already in their kitchen, and helping them turn on an extra 10, 20, 30 orders per day out of their existing infrastructure. So naturally, the way that we designed our technology, not only can we aggregate all the different third-party ordering systems, but we can also aggregate multiple brands into the same device as well to really empower restaurants to do more out of their existing operations. And that's been a huge area of growth and focus for us as a business, particularly when restaurants need those extra orders more than ever. We found that that's pretty much the most impactful thing that we can be doing for our restaurants during this time is coming in and turning on that extra revenue for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, from my perspective, it's been very interesting to watch you guys grow and expand what you're doing into the in the industry. So, Andrew, turning to you, I'll pose a very similar question to you. You and Nabil founded Lunchbox back in February of 2019, and since then, as I alluded to earlier, you guys have made a very big splash. So, if you could tell us about the company and what you guys and your team offer for restaurants.
Sure, yeah. And a little background on myself as well, for some context. I mean, I've been a technologist for past 14 years, in particular, working in iOS development. Most recently, I was at Johnson & Johnson on their 7-minute workout app, which I should probably be using a lot more of, given that we're all stuck inside. But I met Nabil 6 years ago. We've worked together on several different startups, social medias, event planning apps, agencies, and we really aligned when we launched Lunchbox because one, he went from busboy to CMO over the course of 10 years over at Bear Burger. My family worked in restaurants, owned, operated for over 40 years, and we saw what was happening in the industry, right? We saw these third-party fees. We saw the lack of control of over their customer data for the restaurants, and we started Lunchbox with the intent to help convert that traffic and help restaurants grow that experience and that relationship that they have with their customer, and promote their own first-party system in a way that's actually profitable for them. And we have a ton of different integrations. So at Lunchbox, we take all these different pieces. We have over 40 plus different integrations to date, including Ordermark, and it allows the restaurants to take all the things that they know and love and look at it in one place and consolidate in one platform. We again launched 2 years ago. It's been a tremendous ride. Over now over 1,000 restaurants working with us. So just super excited to be chatting with y'all.
Well, that's a spectacular milestone for you guys, Andrew. Thank you. So, moving ahead here with everything that's gone down in the last year, I want to ask you both where you think we are, broadly speaking, in terms of integrating off-premises orders into restaurants. Some of the things I'm wondering from both of you is whether or not at this point most restaurants have implemented some type of digitally integrated solution, or if if there are still a lot of operators out there that are inputting orders manually or using other stopgap measures. Getting more specific, just tell me what you're seeing from the restaurants that you're speaking with. Is there still a lot of work to do in integration? Alex, let's just quickly start with you.
Yeah, this, first of all the online ordering companies out there, which I think there might be over 200 different ordering platforms in the US now. None of them were designed with the others in mind. Each one had their own hardware, their own system to manage, their own online menu, their own reporting system, their own confirmation process. And that was really the foundation of the tablet hell problem that we started to solve for a couple of years back. And if you think about particularly the SMB segment of the market, it feels like the online ordering companies haven't been prioritizing and optimizing integrations into a lot of the point of sale providers for that segment of the market. It does feel like a lot of progress has been made for the enterprise world, the large chain, the multi-units that have had the ability to demand DoorDash to integrate directly into their point of sale system or kitchen display screens, but there's still such a long way to go when it comes to this progress that's going to happen, over the next 5 to 10 years. And because each point of sale system was also designed independently, Not all of them have the right APIs to even open up to these various platforms for, especially when you think about the complexity that happens in online ordering. There are future orders. There are orders that can get modified after they've been placed. There are orders that get canceled shortly after they've been placed. And a lot of POS systems were not really designed with online ordering in mind, and that's what's making this transition so challenging.
Well, thank you for that, Alex. And Andrew, I'll turn the same question in your direction. How much progress has the industry made, and how much work has yet to be done in terms of restaurants integrating their off-premises operations? And on top of that, do you see a really big difference between the mom and pops and those enterprise or franchise brands still?
Yeah, I think that the biggest progress that we've seen is awareness of these problems and of the need for online ordering, especially. I think there was a lot of brands pre-pandemic for sure that were not taking into some of these things into account, or saying like, hey, we're going to leverage all of our online ordering and outsource it outside, to these marketplaces, to third parties, whatever it might be. And then realizing now, once their dining group shut down and they lost that line of revenue, it's devastating. It's devastating for so many restaurants. It continues to be. And I think that there's awareness for the restaurants that they need to go and enable these capabilities for themselves, but also for the consumer as well. And I think consumers are becoming a lot more conscious of where they're making the purchases and ordering directly and calling the stores. And it kind of seems like in some ways, since they're not, those restaurants are still catching up, and whether they be I know there's large brands and like large franchises, and then there's also mom and pops that haven't caught up to that technology. But it seems like there's also that step back. They're saying like, all right, we're gonna take the phone calls, we're gonna take all those pickup orders until we can get these things up and running. Because I think every little piece of where we were saying like we were okay with those inefficiencies, it's become much more apparent, like, all right, we have to dial in all these different integrations. They all have to work together. Everyone has to talk to each other because there's a lot on the line. So I think that the issue certainly, has definitely impacted the mom and pops tremendously, and their awareness is towards that issue is become a lot stronger. But I think it'll affect the full scale, where some of the larger groups will be able to bounce back, and they have that ability just due to size. I think that there's a lot that needs to be done.
I think just to piggyback off that, every channel matters right now. It's so important to reach customers wherever they are. Obviously, you should be prioritizing your own direct ordering channel as much as possible, but the reality of the situation is that it is very expensive to change consumer behavior. And many of these third-party marketplaces that have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get people to open up their app when they're hungry, each of those channels has their own unique customers. There are people who just use DoorDash because they have the Dash Pass, they have their credit card information saved. And if you're not listed on DoorDash, you don't exist for the people who are going to place their lunch order on DoorDash. It's that straightforward. And then, I think it's one of the biggest things that we've seen happen over the last year is that so many restaurants that didn't have a direct ordering strategy or channel quickly implemented one, and we saw the return of the QR code and things that you would have never thought would make a big comeback in the restaurant industry. But there's so much progress that has happened from a tech perspective within the last 12 months, not out of it was really out of necessity more than anything too, where everyone had to just sort of embrace experimentation, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and get as creative as they've ever been in history. And restaurants that pre-pandemic said, I will never do delivery, I'll never have an off-premise menu, I'll never sell my items to people who don't come in here, that mindset changed overnight, and everyone scrambled to find all of the tools and technology and products that can help them reach customers outside of their four walls. So it's been a really, really aggressive shift. And I would say a lot of what we thought was going to happen over the next 10 years has happened in just a matter of months.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would certainly agree with that, and that's the perfect segue, because we know that even before the pandemic, native delivery was an enormous trend happening in the space, where you bring restaurant orders in through a variety of channels, including your own restaurant's website or app if you have one, and then you kick out just the actual delivery to a third-party brand in an effort to get a much lower commission. You are able to collect and utilize customer data. There are a lot of reasons to go native. But let's say we're talking to somebody who hasn't taken that step yet. What does it take in terms of a restaurant's tech stack to actually build a native ordering setup in a way that doesn't make financial reporting more difficult? Because we know that that's has been part of the mix for a lot of brands that have quickly spun up kind of stopgap efforts. So let's start with you on that, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I think that the bottom level of it all is, I mean, that affects everything, is operations, right? And understanding how you're going to operate at the end of it, and when you're looking at your tech stack and seeing like what you're looking to enable, you're going to definitely, folks are taking a much, deeper look at like their point of sale, right? And where they can work at. And Alex touched on that, very well before. It's like, all right, if my point of sale isn't going to be able to play ball, I need to start looking at these other solutions like Ordermark and like other folks out there to go and enable the functionality that I need to operationally solve what I'm having here, right? Like I might not have my own drivers. All right, let's go and leverage DoorDash Drive and their service there in order to get that up and running. I don't necessarily have my own online ordering platform. I don't even know what it's like to even promote those things. All right, let's go try out Chow now. Let's get those. Let's put it on the training wheels for sure, and learn what it's like to have your own. Is this something that our business can handle at this time? Because there's so many different focuses and in-house and online that they need to, as a whether you're SMB or larger, you got to take all those things into account, and that's how you're going to end up building your tech. And I think it's especially finding the right delivery provider that's going to work with you in those areas to provide you the most coverage as well, but also that, I mean, it really comes down to, at the end of the day, that point of sale is such a driving force, and if that point of sale is going to work with other folks, like you see like Toast, it's very integration, heavy and rich, or if they're not, then figuring out what tools you're going to use to kind of be that mainframe, that mainframe for your restaurant.
Well, before we switch to Alex, just a follow-up for you, Andrew. Just as simply as you can put it, should a restaurant expect to have to make investments in technology to create native ordering channels? I mean, do they have to do some of that prep work or investment to be able to do so?
I think that the biggest thing that needs to be invested in is in the education of all right, what are all of my options that are out there? There are scenarios where some brands, it's being able to handle all of the marketing, to promote your own channels, to handle all of the logistics of dealing with all these different integration providers might not be something that a small business is able to, or any business might not be able to tackle at that moment. And so you have to educate yourself on all the different options that are out there, build a strong operations internally to handle online ordering. It's at a basis, they're going to need, whether they're investing money or investing time, they're going to need to invest in online ordering as it is an eventuality, right? Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, once they gain that education, then it'll actually start and enable them to go and effectively leverage their own native solution. And I think that's where we really come in as well, is that we're not operating as like a vendor, we're operating as a partner to the restaurants. And so so much consulting that goes into there, so much help that we do to help them build their campaigns and actually make their online ordering viable through native, rather than just turn it on and if you build it they will come. We all know that that's not the scenario here. That there's a lot of effort and a lot of work, and I think that the business at the end of the day will need to go and evaluate and say all right, is this where I need to put all my focus right now, or can I leverage another system and figure out everything else underneath?
Well, I'll throw that same question your way, Alex.
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well, but I'll just add that most mom and pop, smaller group restaurants are not sophisticated when it comes to IT or digital marketing. Um, Restaurants fundamentally are good at making food and putting their heads down and cooking and production, and I think um, these tools are so important because there's a lot of great tech out there that will help with the marketing automation, that will help leverage a CRM and from a click of a button start promoting. But um, just to share a case study, and Andrew's probably not going to like this case study, but we at Canter's Deli, we had 14 different online ordering platforms. One of those was ChowNow. 13 of them were third-party marketplaces. And unfortunately, 96% of our off-premise business still happened on the third-party marketplaces, and only 4% was happening through our own direct ordering channel on our website and through our mobile app. And to even get to 4% was a struggle because most of the advice that we were getting was the way to get people to order through through your own website is to put like advertising within your restaurant and tell people to download this app by putting table cards on every table and a big sign on your window. And if you're not promoting internally to your customer base to order through this digital channel when there is no in-store dining, it's very hard to get people to shift over to your own channel. The only way to really promote that is through your social media presence, which some restaurants don't even understand how to convey the right messaging to get people to make that shift. And then even with such a large percentage of the order volume happening on the third-party marketplaces, the problem is it's hard to educate the consumer. And I know you mentioned, Andrew, that more and more people are becoming educated that they should order directly from restaurants. But I think we feel that way because we work in the industry. And the reality is, if you ask people who don't work in this industry, like they don't even know how the unit economics work for the restaurant and the third-party marketplace take rates, like all of that stuff is foreign and not understood by most consumers. So it's really a challenge for restaurants to collectively educate consumers that they should try to go directly through the web ordering portal or directly onto your own app. But I think in practice and in reality, only your top percentile of loyal customers are the ones that are going to actually have your mobile app as a restaurant, because it's hard to make that conversion. And so one thing that we've tried to prioritize and focus on as a company when we're thinking about helping restaurants with all of this is, instead of trying to focus on strategies to help our restaurants convert more of their orders over, we're just trying to generate more orders for them. And obviously creating virtual brands in restaurants is a great way to allow a restaurant to meet different consumer groups, service different types of audiences out of their same existing kitchen, where the restaurants don't have to think about in-app promotion and SEO and driving that digital marketing awareness. That's something that we do for them because we realize how hard it is to convince people to shift over. And I think Lunchbox is doing a great job at starting that movement, and I'm hoping that over time more and more consumers can realize how powerful it is for them to order from these restaurants directly. So
I think, and I'll just touch on one last thing as well, is that I think that a lot of times we're always talking about demystifying like what it takes to get your own online ordering, right? But I think also, like you said, demystifying what it takes to actually market your platform. And I think this is just our CEO is a marketing brain for sure. It's definitely helped us to translate that into like whatever we're rolling out, because like what seems like the normal way of doing things, whether it be posters or putting things in the bag stuffers or table tents, versus integrating with their Facebook pixel and your Google tag, and are we going to leverage segment? We're going to get that marketing data, push it to where we need to, and smart email marketing campaigns or push notifications, text messages like this. It's a realization that like you got to do all those things, right? And you got to do all those things and touch on all these different pieces in order to meet the customer where they are, because their awareness of your platform, but their awareness of also just the environment and the industry and what's happening or the news or anything like that, it can't be assumed. It needs to you need to approach them where they're at.
I like this. We're getting into the good stuff, gentlemen, because this is hard, and everybody in the space admits that this is hard, even for companies like Lunchbox that have really put up some successful case studies and numbers in terms of your clients who have hit certain thresholds of native ordering. But more broadly, there are a lot of restaurant technology players now. I mean, it's hard to keep track of. There seemingly are more players every day, and I'm not just speaking about order integration or marketing brands in the space. There are just so many technology providers for restaurants compared to 2 years ago, and I can just feel the stress of an SMB business trying to make sense of this, or to make sense of just the pitches that are coming their way all the time. So, I want to start with you, Alex. What should operators think of as some sort of a checklist for choosing a logistics company in this space? Or, if you want to take that in another direction, what might be some red flags? I mean, I'll let you answer that however you would choose, Alex.
Yeah, well, I can share from my own experience as a restaurant owner that was on the other end of hundreds of these pitches, because whenever someone had anything to sell Canter's Deli, I was the person who was taking those meetings, and sifting through and navigating through all of the options is just overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff being thrown out to you, and you kind of have to determine what's worth investing time in, and what should I pass on. I've always felt like there needs to be a measurable ROI that you can physically see, like from a data perspective. There's so many companies trying to come in and sell you things that will make operations more efficient or save you a little bit of time, and it's hard to track those impacts and those effects. But if someone's coming in and directly showing you, here's 100 more orders a week that we're going to be bringing you, to me, those are the types of investments to be making, because the truth is there are a lot of fixed costs for running a restaurant. The rent is fixed, the lights are already on, the staff's already in the kitchen. And so really focusing on trying to get more output and volume through the kitchen is always been a great way for restaurants to maximize what they're doing without having to hire any more people or do anything more. And I can't tell you how many companies were selling something that didn't have a measurable ROI. Even things like Yelp ads. I remember being so frustrated because we were spending, I think it was $500 a month or $1,000 a month, and all they can tell you is how many people were visiting your Yelp page, or how many people were clicking on the phone number or the directions, but they weren't showing you, here's how much revenue you converted from these ads. And it's when you don't have that visibility and follow through, it's hard to know what kind of impact these different initiatives are having. So the clearer the ROI, the better.
Well, Andrew, same question to you. I mean, is there some sort of a checklist or things that restaurant operators should be thinking about when they're choosing a logistics company in the space? Because everybody's got their own different positioning and different feature sets. So how do they make such a decision?
Yeah, and I think that what Alex touched on especially is you have to find your KPI, and you're going to figure out how is for your business, if you're a restaurant, and how is this partner going to help move that KPI. But I think on another side of it, and given that we have two very integration friendly partners here, I think it's understanding that when you're speaking with them, they have to be very open, integration friendly, willing to play ball with all the tools that you love. In particular, might not know if this partner is going to work for you, right? Like everything you're being sold, the sales folks and you're getting the pitch, but you know what you currently have that might be working, right? Let's say you're using like Ovation for customer feedback, and that's really working and helping out. Now you want to go and base off those conversations. Once you find one of those partners, and you might not have found one of those yet, but let's say you do have one. Hey, how willing are you to work with, this piece, this component that I know is working well for me? And I think a lot of those, and what we're seeing, the shift certainly throughout, all the players across delivery, across marketing, across online ordering, across in-store, out-of-store, is that the communication and that API layer of these systems interacting with one another is something that needs to be like first check on the list. There's all these other different pieces that are going to be very relevant to the brand and where they stand at that time, what their objectives are to accomplish. But the first on the list is you're trying to set a layer, and no matter what you're working with, right? Like if you're speaking about like DoorDash Drive or Postmates has their own offering, or Relay, a local player, or whatever it might be, you got to see like see how they operate as more of a agnostic layer that says that, hey, I'll play and I'll work with all the things that
Well, Alex, I want to go back to you and what you said earlier about how in your own family restaurant, Canter's in LA, that you guys have really, I think this is a proper characterization, struggled to build up the native ordering channel of the business and are just instead focused on bringing everything in that you possibly can. In terms of the economics of especially an independent restaurant, isn't native ordering too important to not keep trying again to raise that number? I'm just kind of curious what you make of that strategy when so many restaurants right now, whether they're independent or are larger, are putting a major focus on that.
I generally agree with you that it is a very important channel to emphasize, but we've found it to be a struggle to try to educate the consumers, and the answer is we are continuing to invest in that strategy. It's not something that we're ignoring or saying this isn't working well, so we're going to stop trying things. It's a constant evolving process to try to shift consumer behavior. And I think a lot of restaurants they put notes in the bags of Grubhub orders and Uber Eats orders saying, hey, next time if you can please order things directly, it will help us a lot as a restaurant. But that actually directly violates the terms of service of these third-party marketplace agreements. So we're trying to be respectful of the partners that we're working with, and we want to be in good standing with those types of companies too. So we probably aren't doing all the things that restaurants have historically done to try to, educate the customers, and we're trying to, make sure that we're not directly violating those contracts either. So it is a balancing act of like how far are we willing to go to try to do that, and overall, I think the third-party orders do have positive unit economics if you make it work. There are certain pricing strategies and menu strategies that are really important to get right. We had to remove things from the menu that had really high food costs. We had to price things actually slightly higher than what they are in the restaurant, which is something that all the third-party marketplaces are actually okay with now. And if consumers are willing to pay 5 to 10% more to have their order conveniently delivered on Postmates, that's not an issue to us whatsoever. So there are some strategies around making third-party marketplaces work in a profitable way. And even when you do have orders coming natively on your own website, you still have to pay for the last mile delivery, whether you're doing it yourself or outsourcing it. There's still some associated cost there from the marketing spend and whatever else is going into acquiring that customer. So it's not as big of a gap as I think everyone thinks it is. There's still those fees associated when someone's ordering directly on your website. So, the answer is both. We're trying to maximize both, our order volume internally on our own direct channel, and also up here, as high up as we can in the search engines of these platforms, and really maximizing that digital real estate strategy so that we're at the top of the apps when people are trying to find us as well.
Well, I appreciate that extra color, Alex. Thank you. And I'm really glad that you brought up terms of service with your delivery provider, because I have done my fair share of interviews and written a number of stories about strategies to try to boost your native ordering platform before anyone ever brought that up, that some of those strategies might actually be violating your contract with DoorDash or Grubhub or whoever it may be. So Andrew, you know where I'm going with this. I mean, actively anti-third party, or at least strongly encourage your clients to move away from third party as much as possible. How concerned should restaurants be that some of these strategies, whether or not your team has recommended them, might be directly violating their terms of their contract with their delivery partners?
Yep, and I think that overall, when you look at this, rules are changing every day, and there's so many laws that are going into effect that change consistently how marketplaces and how first party also are able to operate and govern themselves, right? I think that's one side of all of it. The other side of all of it is that sometimes when it means the lights on versus lights off of the business, and we saw that for sure over the past year especially, so those restaurants are willing to take those risks in order to make sure that they're able to keep the folks employed, keep food on the table, etc. Aside from all of those points as well, I think it's more about empowerment, right? And what we're talking about is that there's these third-party systems, and I think overall, like as a channel to bring awareness of your brand and these third-party systems, they're very valid, right? But I think that none of the restaurants are thinking about are focusing on ways to effectively take those customers and bring them to their own first-party systems. And I think that's the success that we've had, obviously, with the platform. I mean, our goal was Project 80/20, right? If you're doing 80% of all, and that's 80% of all your online ordering from third parties, Grubhub, DoorDash, and 20% from your own system, that's sitting great. And as you saw with the figures that Alex shared earlier, like that would be fantastic for the businesses. And what we were able to convert on average right now, 46% of all of our brands are doing 46% of all their digital ordering through their own channels versus third party. And it's not about cannibalizing, it's about growing those third party channels and using them because they consistently advertise as a marketing tool for awareness and building promotion. And whether it be using those third parties or using Yelp or any of those other systems, knowing how to use them effectively and looking at a lot of times looking at these terms of service and understanding that given that the world is so drastically changing day by day and month by month, that so a lot of these things are relevant to change. And then also that there's real folks and real people in those kitchens and real restaurants and businesses and families. I know of it.
Well, I personally haven't heard of anyone that has had one of the third-party providers go after them for that, but I assume that language is there for a reason. And if I owned a restaurant, I would certainly want to be paying pretty close attention to that. But I want to shift gears pretty significantly, gentlemen, because the title of this session is Digital Ordering Update, and I think it would be a big miss if we didn't touch on ghost kitchens and virtual restaurants. I mean, that really feels like a land rush in the restaurant space happening right now. And I think that there are a lot of larger restaurant groups who haven't exactly laid their cards on the table and showed what they're planning on doing, whether it's within a multi-concept ghost kitchen facility or creating their own virtual brands for their own restaurants, or bringing in outside virtual brands into their restaurants. And so my question for you both, and we'll start with you, Alex, is do restaurants need to do any prep work on their tech stacks if they are expecting to either go into the ghost or virtual realm? I mean, I'm assuming there's a way you can do it kind of the hard way manually, and if it's successful, you can then invest in something more sophisticated. But how do you see this from your perspective on both sides of the fence, Alex?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, because it's still the Wild West, for as far as I'm concerned, from the virtual restaurant world. There's no best practices to learn from that are older than a year or two. You know, like most of the operations and initiatives and experiments that we've seen are still in their infancy stages. So it's, you know, there's a lot of different approaches to the virtual restaurant world. Personally, I find that the commissary kitchen, kind of ghost kitchen model has its challenges, mainly because there is incremental rent, there is incremental labor, there's incremental equipment, and therefore there's a very large break even to achieve in a delivery-only format. And most restaurants, I think, are going to find those models unsuccessful unless they're hitting, you know, upwards of 100 online orders a day, which some brands are capable of, but many are not. Particularly mom and pop restaurants would struggle to make that model work. But we are seeing a lot of restaurants realizing the potential of their underutilized existing kitchens and assets, and getting creative and experimenting with launching new menus, new brands out of their existing operation. And from a tech perspective, each brand on every platform that it's existing on creates additional operational complexity, reporting complexity, menu complexity, and it becomes increasingly important to have an integrated solution, especially if you're going to be running, you know, more than one or two brands out of a single kitchen. So we see a lot of restaurants that have done this and are using systems like Ordermark and others to help them from an operational complexity standpoint to aggregate everything into a single device or into a POS system. And I think it becomes increasingly critical to look at an integration like that as you start to layer more complexity into the business. So it's, you know, it's still very early days in this space. It's already becoming extremely oversaturated with just the sheer volume of virtual restaurants that are appearing on these platforms. And it's not as simple anymore as just spinning up a grilled cheese menu or a chicken sandwich brand, putting it online and expecting it to be successful. There's so much that has to go into making it right, making it successful. And there's a huge learning curve to understand the strategies of the optimizing the promotions and the marketing and everything that goes into making sure that these new virtual menus are actually going to get orders, especially as it gets more and more crowded. So that's a big area of focus for us as an organization, is helping restaurants understand how to be successful with their virtual restaurant menus.
Mm-hmm. Well, Andrew, same question your way, but I want to add something additional into that for you, because I've heard some software providers suggest that traditional point of sale systems could become a thing of the past in light of this very rapid rise of ghost kitchens and especially virtual restaurants. So that's a two-parter for you. You know, what should restaurants be doing to prep their tech stack if they want to go into one or both of those directions? And how does point of sale factor into all of that?
Yeah. And I think once we saw, right, Mr. Beast launched 300 restaurants and his concept on 300 restaurants in one day. It was a big eye opener for a lot of folks and saying like, like what's the possibilities here? Now we'll see if the brand continues to grow and thrive. And I mean, I love Mr. Beast as a content creator, but yeah, very entertaining. So, but I think as we look at the these ghost kitchens and a lot of folks that we're talking with, a lot of them don't have point of sale, so there's a necessity. They're leveraging Ordermark. I'm sorry, Alex, they're leveraging also Otter and DeliverAct and whatever other systems might be out there as well, in order to facilitate the KDS. I mean, it's essentially what they need is a KDS for these systems, as well as like whatever kind of reporting metrics and everything, and analytics and insights, and that they'll need aside from there. But I think point of sales, I mean, at least all the ghost kitchens that we've spoken with, very few are I mean, some of them, because they operate if they're operating in a traditional capacity in some way, right? They have some brick and mortars in addition to the ghost kitchens. We'll see a POS, but a lot of times we'll just see like, hey, listen, we have like a tablet solution, or actually we've been doing a lot of like of direct integrations with their own, like they have their own technology groups and departments with their, and they'll have their own solution for all of this. So yeah, we're seeing that kind of movement as well.
Alex, I assume you have some thoughts in this direction as well. I mean, you were a very early adopter, one of the earliest adopters I know of in the virtual restaurant space, but you do have that traditional restaurant background. Do you see point of sale systems becoming a thing of the past, or do you see them adapting to what's going on in the moment? You know, I mean, I think of two different groups out there: people who are retrofitting an existing business, but also looking ahead to hopefully a brighter future where people are starting new restaurants again. You know, what do you make of all of that?
Yeah, you know, I think the next generation POS systems will evolve to look differently. I mean, if you think about the requirement of operating a delivery-only model, a delivery-only business, you don't need, you know, reservation management. You don't need table assignment. You don't need even payments in many situations. So the whole idea of a point of sale system actually has changed a lot. And I do see some of the more innovative point of sale systems starting to embrace the ghost kitchen world and making changes to their systems to be more flexible to those types of environments. But there are a lot of baseline functionalities that are built into POS systems that are just not going to be relevant for this next generation restaurant. So it's actually, you know, we do have our Ordermark systems in a lot of these ghost kitchen facilities like Kitchen United and Zool and Colony, and a lot of these operators, they're only using Ordermark to power their entire off-premise business. And there is no dine-in, there is no pickup situation in some of these operations. So they don't need traditional systems, you know, unless they're really looking at, you know, clocking in, clocking out, inventory management. There's some basic functionality that some restaurant operators do optimize for and prioritize that is not quite built out in the Ordermark system as of yet. But I see our system evolving and POS systems evolving to meet the needs of those operators.
Well, as we're getting to into the tail end here of our time slot, I want to ask you guys a question. I acknowledge this is a cliche question at this point, but you two are about the sharpest folks I could ask this of. You know, how much of a shift do you expect in customer order behavior once we're out of this pandemic? I don't want to jinx anything, but you know, we're supposedly looking ahead to the 4th of July as taking on a little bit of new meaning this year. What do you think sticks, or what do you think goes away from the habits that have formed and kind of crystallized during these last 12 months? Andrew, let's start with you.
No, yeah, and I am very hopeful for that July 4th. I'll set that as my as well. But I think you said it correctly. Is habits. So it takes 30 days to build a habit, right? And what folks have built here is not like habits; they're like lifelong traits, desires, like that speed and efficiency of what they previously expected is now completely changed. And I think that, and there's a lot of folks that are using all this technology that previously in the past hadn't, and from all different age groups, demographics, and whatnot. And so when you look at that, and now all of a sudden you go and reopen the door and you say, everybody go back out, do things how you once did. I think that it's easy to say that, like, some of these scenarios where we're talking about QR codes on the table and order directly from the table, some of these things might stick with. I mean, there's a lot of other things happening with, like, rising. I mean, the minimum wage, federal minimum wage rising, as well as other different aspects happening that are outside of pandemic, right? That are going to certainly influence and continue to have effect on how people interact. But yeah, I think that I don't think that folks are going to just all of a sudden, like the second that everything opens up again, they're going to go and delete all the apps, right? There's things that are going to stick around, and experiences and dopamine kicks that they're getting from these platforms, these systems that are stick around within them.
I'm not sure I remember what dopamine is, but Alex, same question to you. What sticks and what goes?
I agree with a lot of what you just said, Andrew. That there are permanent changes that have gone into effect. Consumer behavior has fundamentally changed, and people are more and more used to digital ordering. It's not going away. It's not a trend. It's a convenience that now more people than ever have gotten adjusted to and used to. And the age group and demographic of the ordering audience has also drastically widened to include a lot of the older generations and even kids as well. And I think undoubtedly a percentage of the order volume will of course shift back into dining and back into restaurants, but every restaurant will have some sort of off-premise offering. Even higher end fine dining restaurants, who have invested in creating these like amazing box experiences, those types of offerings, I think will remain on these menus. I think people will, business travel will forever be changed. Office culture is forever changed as more and more companies are committing to distributed workforces. So, businesses that relied on catering very heavily pre-pandemic had to make really aggressive adjustments, and some of them didn't make it through. I don't see catering ever going back to the numbers that it was at a certain point, just because not all the offices are coming back together, and not all the events that are going to happen are happening. So there are some big fundamental changes that have happened as a result of this, but obviously people are eager and excited to return to dining for all the experience reasons that people love around going out to restaurants and celebrating and dates and family events and birthdays, and all of those things are still going to continue to happen in restaurants, but there will forever be a larger shift to this digital ordering that is not going away. So.
Well, it's hard to argue with any of that, and I think Instagram is going to be a wild place on July 5th. But I really appreciate both of you making time for us and our audience of folks who are looking to learn more about everything that both of you guys and your companies are doing. So thank you both, Alex and Andrew. It's been a pleasure having you here. I really appreciate the time. And for those of you watching at home or at work, stay tuned. We'll be right back with the next session.